Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If we could have roll call, Mr. Snyder.
Mr. Panaro.
Here.
Ms. Grieve.
Here.
Ms. Grosek.
Here.
Mr. Hess.
Here.
Mr. Teresi.
Here.
We have a wonderful group of Millridge students who are going to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
This is Ginger.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Myself and Mrs. Longo, the assistant principal, are so excited to recognize our students. But before we do that, I just want to thank all of our staff that came out tonight. I know this is always a hard time to be away from your families, and it's dinner time and all those things. You guys have all had a long work day, and many of you just stayed and worked straight through. So thank you guys for being here and taking time to do that. You guys are very much appreciated. Thank you also to the families who are here. We can't do this without you, and your partnership and working with our students is just so very appreciated. So thank you very much. We're going to get started recognizing each of our 3 students for their tremendous efforts here at Millridge. The first person we would like to recognize is Miss Lynette Lott, right here. Lynette is a 2nd grade student at Millridge. She is a very hard worker. She completes work on time, even when it's challenging. She's kind and she's helpful to everyone. She participates often and does her best work every day while she's at school. She's a pleasure to have in class, and we appreciate Lynette's positive classroom leadership. Keep up the good work, Lynette. We congratulate and recognize you this evening. Thank you so much.
I just have to say, Timmy has been so excited all day, and anytime somebody has asked him, he's been jumping up and down with a big smile on his face, so I'm so excited that we get to recognize him. Timmy is a 4th grade student with us. He comes to school every day with this big smile on his face. He's so eager to learn. He's a great role model in his classroom and is also such a kind-hearted soul. He is always including everyone and continuously works hard each and every day. His positive attitude and hard work are just a few of the great qualities that he brings to the classroom. He is a joy to have in class, and we all look forward to the rest of the school year with him. We congratulate and recognize Timmy Williams.
And we have one last student to recognize here, and that is Nick Carinacci. Isn't that a fun last name to say? He's a 5th grade student at Millridge. Nick is a well-rounded student. He has a very positive attitude about school, and he always tries his best. He works hard to get his assignments done, and he often gets them done ahead of time. Nick is a good friend to others. He's dependable, and he's always willing to lend a helping hand. Outside of school, he plays basketball, baseball, and pickleball. Keep up the good work, Nick. Friends, when you're done saying thank you, come on back for a picture, okay? these awards can always go out to any staff member. We are so lucky at Millridge. We have, I mean, I may be biased, but I think we have the best staff ever. So these could always go to anyone, but this year we really tried to consider who are 2 people that we need to and want to recognize in a special way. And we selected Scott Sago from Classified and Lisa Webb from Certified. So go ahead, Jason.
You're first. All right, Scott is a sincere pleasure to have at Millridge. He radiates pride for the work he does in our building and always finds ways to celebrate the work he and the entire custodial team do together. Scott is always willing to go the extra mile to ensure our students, staff, and building are well cared for. He talks about being a proud Mayfield graduate and cares deeply about the Wildcat community. Scott not only excels as a custodian, but also as a colleague who cares about others. Thank you for making Millridge sparkle.
Before I talk about Lisa, I just want to give one other quick shout out to Scott and Selena if she's here. Melissa Book and our PTG purchased the sensory walkway where they have to very tediously pull apart these stickers and decals that get placed on the walls and the floors of our school. They are working so hard at it, and they've got part of it up already, and it looks fabulous. So just that special thank you to PTG and then the 3 of you for your work. We are so happy to have her this year. I'm sad because she's retiring at the end of this year. However, her husband's already promised that she can sub. So, she has to go home. He wants that, so we figured we can get her here. So Lisa Beck is a leader, she's an innovator, and a positive force within Millridge. This year will be her last year as she journeys on to the wonderful world of retirement. Her legacy of care for students and collaborative work will live on within the 3rd grade team. Lisa is a member of the instructional leadership team and remains committed to engaging students in the learning process and finding the best ways to meet each of her students' needs. Lisa will be missed in the 3rd grade team upon her retirement, but we look forward to celebrating all she has to offer in her final year with us. Thank you so much.
Our Millridge Mustangs embrace our focus-forward Mayfield plan across our classrooms on a daily basis. We enthusiastically share with you how we create an environment where our students reach their full potential through rigorous, student-centered teaching and learning. Our Wildcat family celebrates our mission of every student, every day, and all we do through all-access learning with a promise for lifelong learning, dignity, and respect for all.
All the staff at Millridge makes us, the students, a priority every day.
At Millridge, we encourage healthy personal habits, social and emotional learning, character development, and promoting sense of belonging. Kindergarten students have been using the Little Spots of Kindness books during morning meetings to teach and practice social and emotional learning.
I'm feeling yellow spot because today's math birthday. Can't keep the same. I'm the scribble, a scribble spot. I'm the rainbow colors, all the marks off in my head. I'm around to it's
In third grade, intervention specialist Mr. Palma and speech teacher Mrs. James have a Friendship Friday session where they work on social skills. Students host a lunch bunch and are able to invite friends. Most recently, students and staff created a pumpkin patch together where friendship attributes were discussed. Our Wildcats enjoy having the opportunity to build relationships with students and staff alike.
Millridge develops students who exhibit the portrait of a Wildcat competencies in our schools and in our community. In second grade, we have exhibited curiosity while learning about ecosystems and investigating the outside on a nature research walk. Students engaged in book studies and peer discussion about how biotic and abiotic things change the ecosystem.
Fourth grade, we are working on personal narratives in ELA class as we embrace communication and collaboration during our peer editing phase. Students helped edit their classmates' writing by celebrating what pieces of the writing were strong and providing clear directions and details to offer suggestions on what they think would make the writing stronger.
In fifth grade, we are tackling multi-step mathematical word problems by using critical thinking to correctly solve for solutions and understand the problem-solving process. When questions require critical thinking, our students show persistence and remain engaged through a productive struggle. Using the depth and complexity icons along with peer collaboration, fifth graders are deconstructing mathematical concepts and word problems to gain understanding of the problem and multiple ways to attack it.
In fifth grade, we're using all access time to personalize students' learning while leveraging the expertise of our talented teachers. We use data to group students based on their needs to challenge them in their zone of proximal development. We have students transitioning between intervention and enrichment instruction based on their personal needs. Students are supported with differentiated instruction and modalities to maximize their academic growth.
The PLC across grade levels is the vehicle by which we analyze data using 4 key questions about student growth and differentiation. It is the compass guiding teachers towards personalized intervention and enrichment strategies for students. Each team member is an expert at what they do and contributes something different for the good of the team, the grade, and the school. At each PLC, the team comes together to share expertise and ideas and craft a framework of learning that benefits every student every day.
Thank you so much to all of the Millridge Mustangs and Millridge Nation. Absolutely wonderful presentation, and so glad the families were able to come and partake. Awesome. You guys are doing just incredible. Thank you. All right. Next, we move on to community communications. We have two individuals that were interested in speaking. One, unfortunately, is not to an agenda item and did not contact us the 5 business days ahead attached to bill. So that issue will be brought to central office to be discussed and rectified. The second individual would like to speak to an agenda item, Mr. David Hatton, to agenda item 9D.
Mr. Adams, before you have 5 minutes, the 4-minute mark, I'll raise my hand. 30 seconds mark, I'll also raise, just let you know you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I have a question. You have a committee called the Financial Stewardship and Operations Committee. And I would imagine that's heavily involved in the preparation of the 5-year forecast that we're going to talk about this week. I was wondering when the last meeting was held, or when the next meeting might be held, because I understand they are supposed to be public meetings. I've asked to be on the list of advice of those meetings for 2 years, and I haven't been invited, so I'm curious as to how that all works. It's just a question. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't do question and answer at this time.
Okay.
But we will definitely get in contact with you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. That moves us next to President's announcements. It was pretty exciting earlier this evening to listen to all of the great things that are happening around the district, all the dust that's being raised everywhere. And I'm very excited to see everything slowly coming to fruition. But that's pretty much all I have at this point. Next is superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Barnes this evening, Assistant Superintendent Steve Nutt. I really just want to take a moment to thank everybody who participated in our pillar conversation regarding our operations earlier this evening. I appreciate the feedback and comments. Thank you very much, Team Millridge, for showing up and supporting. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That moves us to the Focus Forward pillar update.
Sure. Sure. Yes, so this evening we had our operations. Conversation began at 4:30. We began that talk with discussions about the facility improvements, status. Mr. Nedley, for the doctor, because it's fun. Give a very nice overview. I don't know, Steve, if you'd like to share any of those, just a quick macro view of the status of the construction project.
Sure. We were a very busy summer, 2023. We were in 5 different substantial projects, 2 at the elementary levels of Lander and Central Elementary School. Both of those about 96% complete. A really outstanding item is the elevator that's going into both those locations to increase accessibility. The main entry drive at the high school, you guys have all seen that happening over the past few months, a little bit longer than that. Still waiting on signalization. There's a long lead time still due to COVID on electronics and some other items. We won't see those pieces and parts of that project probably until around the first of the year, and expect that project to complete. Infrastructure is all done. Stormwater retention is all done. So it's just a matter of kind of closing up that project. So I'm wondering why we haven't finished yet. That's the reason. The CVET move over to the Innovation Center is well underway. We're going through the punch list items now, which means we're wrapping up the project and identifying certain items that still need to be rectified and fixed. We look to move that population of students from their current location to to the new location right after the first calendar year. Being cognizant of that student population, making sure we do that incrementally where it's not a big change for those kids all at one time. So that's kind of a brief overview of kind of where we're at. Also getting ready to break ground on a new secured main entrance main door, if you will, to Gatesville's Elementary School. That project will start over winter months.
We also heard an update on the new bus app. It's going to be here at Millridge where families can enroll and know when their bus is coming, when the bus might change, et cetera, et cetera. We're really excited about it. We unveiled it at Gates Mills, and I believe at Center as well. And so we're just going to be rolling through all of the buildings. I think the one statistic that I thought was really interesting was 2,000 of our 4,000 students are riding our buses this year, which is an increase of, I believe, about, is it 300 students? But we're also traveling less miles, but driving, bringing more students to schools. That's more efficiency and I think more effectiveness in that span. And then we also talked about the 5-year forecast. We talked about the key indicators considered in it. We talked about deficit spending beginning next year. We also reminded those that are in attendance that these facility improvements were made possible by moving one-time cash reserves to fund the improvements that Mr. Nedlick just spoke of, as well as handling some one-time staffing, not necessarily staffing, but personnel costs as well. We mentioned the fact that we're looking at likely an operating levy in November of 2024. It indicated that it's been 8 years since our last request. I know this sounds like a really, levy talk is always a tough conversation, but it's been 8 years, and I know that we've worked very hard to extend it from the 4-year commitment we made initially, and certainly COVID just disrupted everything. So I'll talk more about that from a financial update. I know that many of you are sitting on the edge of your seats. Thank you.
And speaking of sitting on your edge of your seats, we do like to take a moment to allow students to leave if they need to. So we're going to take just a brief break because I know that they're not able to be sitting on the edge of their seats listening to the financial. So we're going to take just a brief intermission. All right. Next item is superintendent's consent agenda. Do I have motion to approve items A to T?
Second. Mr. Jesse moved. That's second. Thank you.
Roll call.
Mr. Panaro.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
We move then to other superintendent's business and then 2025 Quebec City trip for Mayfield French language students. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Reed.
Roll call.
Mr. Panaro.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Next item is a memorandum of understanding. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Panaro.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Next, we move to the treasurer's report and financial statements for September 30th, 2023.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Panaro.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
And now the moment you've all been waiting.
Yes.
The 5-year forecast presentation
Yes,
by
thank you.
Mr. Scott Snyder.
Yes. Forgot to see. What I plan to do this evening is walk you through the key points of the 5-year financial plan. I would like to make mention the entire 40-page document is currently on the district webpage. It's attached to this agenda and it will be filed as it is required 2 times per year, one in the fall and then an update if necessary in the spring. I'm going to walk through just high-level concepts. I'm going to talk about some areas of concern, identify key items that are included, and then walk through a graphical inline presentation or visual depiction of where we're going. So to begin, what is it and why do we do it? First of all, it's required by statute, Ohio Revised Code 5705.412, which was an outgrowth of the DeRolf litigation, quite frankly. when the Ohio Supreme Court found the way in which the state funded its schools, one of the repercussions was, well, if schools are having financial problems, they got to tell us. How are they going to tell us we're going to make them do a financial plan? This goes back to 1998 when it was first introduced. Not only was it intended to provide a financial plan, it was also to identify districts that were heading to fiscal financial difficulty. It wasn't as if they were going to provide resources to prevent the difficulty, but so they could understand that if it happened, when was it going to happen? And if it happened, districts fell into what's called state receivership, where the Board of Education is taken out of the mix. It's not an elected body, it's an appointed body, and they just simply can wipe out the collective bargaining agreements, the way the district currently operates, and make decisions to balance the budget. What we use it for is to basically predict the future. It's an estimate, it's a standardized long-range planning. Next slide, please. It has assumptions in it. I will tell you, and I said this earlier tonight, these assumptions are wrong, even as they are printed now. It is a blueprint, a roadmap. We live in a very dynamic environment. Things can and do change. Economically, we look at the activities occurring in the world. Interest rates are spiking. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm going to mention what is happening around Ohio with respect to reappraisal in counties that are subject to reappraisal right now. The housing market, as we all know, supply and demand, it got disrupted because of COVID. COVID was another key economic factor. So all of that rolled into this. If I could predict the future, I certainly would not be doing this job. I would obviously buying and selling stocks. But it's based on market conditions that are known today and assumed to be predicted into the future. As I mentioned, there will be differences between the projected and actual results. Next slide, please. What I mentioned earlier this evening was when we developed the budget, what we're now doing is we're coalescing around the Focus Forward initiative, which is essentially an end product, if you will, of all the input from this community. We've got 4 strategic pillars: our students, our people, our business communities, and our operations. We heard that mentioned this evening in the Millridge presentation. So this is it's a living and breathing document. So within that, in each of those 4 pillar areas, we focus our resources. Obviously with our students being the primary focus, but we can't forget the other 3 prongs, which are our people, our community certainly, and certainly our operations, which was that conversation this evening. So I just put that in there as a reference point. Obviously, mission and vision is still very dear to this district, so please, next slide. Budget composition. This is very basic, very rudimentary. I know when Brad and saw this, he laughed the first time we saw it a number of years ago because a lot of folks don't necessarily understand what is a budget. What is a budget composition? Revenues less expenses equals what? Ending cash balance. You'd like that ending cash balance to be positive, not negative. There's a variety of forms of ending cash balances. There's operating cash flows. Does my income exceed my outflow? So I have a net positive operating cash flow, and then I've got a positive ending cash balance. I'll talk about those 2 concepts in a moment. We've got 3 categories of revenue. Predominant revenue on the left-hand side. The first category on the expenditure side is where we spend most of our money, and that is in people. We'll see in a moment. We are a people business. On the left side, local property taxes fuel this district, regardless of what happens in Columbus. We'll see in a moment what I mean by that. Next slide, please. At the top are the statistical information. Dollar values are millions, percentages, but below are the graphical representations. I know at the seat you can't really see the numbers, so I'm just going to clarify for everyone. The big blue shaded pipe area on the left-hand side, that represents 88 cents of every tax dollar. Every dollar we receive from operating revenue, that's called local property taxes. In other words, 88 cents of every dollar received comes from local sources, our property taxpayers, whether they be our residents or our business partners. On the right-hand side, the big blue shaded area, that is people. 76 cents of every dollar we spend is in people. One would argue, why do you spend so much money in people? Because we have 4,000 students in this district. We've had 4,000 students since 1980. However, the mix and the needs of those students have changed over time. To say that a student in 1980 is the same as a student today, obviously we'd all be foolish for saying that because technology has changed the world. We are a global world, if you will. Kids are exposed to far more things at younger ages, and to keep up with that need and demand, it requires not only people, but also resources. So it's a more dynamic world. So to add to the revenue discussion, 7 cents of every dollar received comes from the state. Now that 7 cents has been somewhat static, and I will mention that we will receive more money out in the future because of this thing called the Fair School Funding Formula. One of the risks associated with that formula, it's a 6-year phase-in. We as a district benefit from the fact that we never really got a whole lot of state money, and most of it was called guaranteed. It was a fixed dollar amount. This new funding formula creates metrics unique to each district. The one thing they did in House Bill 33, which is referenced in the document, is that they moved the cap, the guarantee level, from 5% to 10%. Who benefited from that? We did. Because we are considered a guarantee district, even with the new mechanics of the formula. So we are going to receive about $1.7 million more next year, $1 million this year, so cumulative is going to be about 2.7 over the life of the 2-year budget cycle. Now I mentioned 2 years, 6-year phase-in, because legislators have a tendency to make decisions that are based on economic conditions that existed in this biennial budget. I believe they've blown a big hole in the budget because they lowered income taxes, and I think that this whole thing is going to be stalled out in the next biennium, but I did not consider that in this forecast. That's just simply me saying I think that's going to happen. Nonetheless, next slide please. So this shows revenue growth. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but what I've intended to demonstrate here is the scaling is consistent on this one and the next slide to demonstrate the growth that we see in revenue, because we do realize growth year over year. That growth ranges between 1% to probably a maximum of 2%. However, our expenditure growth rate is between 4 and 5, 3.5 to 5%. Because things like health insurance, things that are impacted by market conditions like fuel, utilities, that's a tough predictor. It doesn't necessarily follow the same, that 1 to 2% growth rate, especially when you've got a high inflationary market, which is where we're heading. Where we have the benefit, however, is we've locked our salary and wage schedules in for 4 years. We're in year 2 of 4 years. We negotiated those a year ago when inflation was a little bit more tame. Those negotiated settlements, I think, were well in our best interest, and I'll mention in a moment. One of the tools that we use to reduce those, fix those long-term costs in exchange for a one-time payment. Just go to the next slide, please. You can see the growth on the expenditure side, it's scaled the same, but that projection is much steeper. The rate of growth is much steeper on the expense side. This anomaly that existed right here last year, FY23, this big red area up here, that's where this district and this board elected to take $26 million out of its one-time cash reserves and savings account and move $20 million into a capital improvements fund. That $20 million is currently, as Mr. Nedley mentioned, that's the center school improvements, that's the Lander School improvements, that's what you're seeing in front of Mayfield High School, the Innovation Center addition, the new main entrance, what we're going to see at Gates Mills. Using one-time resources for one-time expenses to have profound impact on the academic program. I mentioned the negotiations. We moved $6 million out of our one-time cash reserves because we paid an additional value in exchange for a lower percentage increase, which is a permanent increase on our expenses, one time to our staff. Help us reduce the percentage increase in year 1 and 2 and 3 in exchange for one-time money in years 1, 2, and 3, which means the projection and the future impact of that was one time for the one time, but the permanent was much lower. If that makes any sense. Next slide, please. So taking all of this information, red is expenses, green is revenue. What I'm attempting to illustrate here is obviously you can see the green bar graphs, slight growth out into the future. So from this point forward, this is all estimates. We're seeing slight growth in revenue, obviously growth in expenses. The yellow line represents ending cash balances. At the end of 21-22, we had a $56.4 million cash carryover. Last year we moved $26 million out to pay for these one time. That carryover balance was reduced to 32.7. Now remember, that's cash reserves. What these numbers represent are the net surplus or deficits related to operating revenue and operating expenses. So what happens during the year? Can revenue keep up pace with expenses? Last year this was an anomaly. We did this, that was a byproduct of the one-time move, so that was essentially fabricated by a move that we made. This year, we're expecting a slight deficit of $424,000, but it's a balanced budget. If we're within 1% of our operating expenses, we need that to be balanced. However, beginning next year, we begin deficit spending and it continues out to 27-28. The cash carryover balance is basically offsetting that deficit, but if you notice, we go from $32 million to $13.7 million in 27-28. The first warning sign of a levy request is when we begin deficit spending. the textbooks and the experts will tell you, you don't want to go more than 2 years within deficit spending. Why? Because if we were to delay to 25, 26, or let's just say we waited out to 27, 28, we would have to pass enough millage first to make up that difference before we then begin to think about inflationary increases in expenses. In other words, we'd probably have to pass a formula operating levy just to make up the deficit or cut program. But if enrollment remains static at 4,000, how do you cut? You can, but what impact are we having? So what we intend to do, what the recommendation thus far is, we're going to focus on the 2024 operating levy, so November of 24, and the target millage rate is no more than 5 mils. It's been 8 years since the last levy request, 2016. We extended that levy, we said 4, pushed to 8. And the goal would be to push this out as long as we could. Obviously, the goal minimum expectation would be 4 mils. Next slide, please. This is just simply a very, this is an illustration, a mathematical illustration. How do you develop a millage rate? And then what do you have to do if you start deficit spending and you can't cut expenses? And then the millage that's necessary in order to offset that. So if we had a deficit in year 1, it was $1 million, it'd be 0.71 mils or 6.6 if we were looking at something greater than 5. It's just something you look at your own time. It just illustrates the fact that when you get deficit spending, you got to make up that difference first. Next slide, please. My concluding remarks, and I'm going to kind of go off script for a moment. Some concerns, local concerns. Progressive Insurance has idled Campus 1. They're still paying taxes on that facility. It's approximately $1.2 million of tax revenue to this district. 1 mil in this district is 1.5 million. It's almost a mil. Progressive in total represents about $4 million of operating revenue to the district, or 5% of our operating revenue. Progressive is a very big player. We've got to pay attention to them. Now, I've been asking what happens if with this remote work environment, they don't come back. Well, those assets are valued not based on anything local, because who else has got a complex like that? But they'll look at a greater geographic boundary. But what we're seeing in our class 2, office is getting decimated, not only here but everywhere. We have a lot of office property, Rockwell Automation, Parker Hannafin, to name a few. Is that they're looking to devalue those properties. They're going to challenge the values of those properties. Depending upon when those value challenges are finally determined, because we do fight those, that could be a potential loss to the district. The other area where we're seeing a lot of softening is in the commercial base. Think retail. Costco just recently challenged the value of their property. What they're doing is a business model. How do I reduce my fixed costs? And they're using COVID and foot traffic and sales data from that time frame, which I think Costco was busy when I was there, even with war masks, because a lot of those valuation methodologies is not based on an appraisal, it's based on income, it's based on sales volume, so they're valued differently. I'm going to look quickly at a page because quite frankly I can't remember the exact statistic. I am getting old, and north of 50, as my wife reminds me. 22.9 million of our tax collections, 22.9, I don't know the percentage, it comes from our class 2 property payers. So if we get about 72 million, so about a third, that's a big number. We are blessed by having a wonderful commercial tax base, but because of the recent activity and the impact of COVID, it's something we got to pay attention to. Our 3 big risks, and I said this earlier, legislative, what the state does to us, not for us, that's a risk that we maintain cash reserves to manage. Cash flow, we got some big corporate players like Progressive, if they were to shut their doors, that would have a tremendous blow on the district. I think if you look at Mayfield Village, because of the reduction in the income tax revenue they're getting, they have significant cash reserves to not do anything draconian with respect to the city services that they offer. And then finally, economic. We're not immune to the economic world that sits out there. We are a business. We're one of the largest businesses in the Mayfield City School District communities among the 4. We pay taxes, payroll taxes, to support local businesses. So we also want to make sure that we're watching what's happening economically out there. So I think efficiencies, utilization of strategic cash reserves. Here's the beauty where we sit today. We are not facing and a cash deficit necessarily with our ending cash, with our savings account. You don't have to make knee-jerk reactions to what's happening around this really still what I call wacky little world. And then one thing I just failed to mention, which I mentioned earlier, just came to my mind. Cuyahoga County is scheduled for reappraisal next year, 2024. And you've been watching statewide of the counties that are going through reappraisal now, the average increase on class one property or homes, 30% increases year over year. Now I will tell you, this district will not see a 30% increase in its revenue because all of our revenues voted and it will get reduced by, the effective rate will get reduced by 30% to offset the increase in the values, and the net effect of the district will be essentially negligible. We'll get some growth, but not a lot. But when people look at their property values, it's going to be very, very interesting because they'll think, hey, I can sell my house for that. And B, it's going to have, I think, profound impact. I think the only thing that's going to maybe cause a pause is the interest rate increases. When a 30-year fix is 8%, the buyer can't afford that 30% increase on added value of the house. I don't know where this thing is going. This is the logic that is a little frightening. Enough of that. Questions? Comments, thoughts?
Good. Mr. Snyder, what does it cost per child?
You would ask that question. So if the overall budget, this is the operating budget. So if you look at statistics on the CUP report, which they include and exclude some things, this would not include CVAC, this would not include preschool, this would not include Excel Tech. Let me do two quick calculations and I will tell you in just 2 seconds what our overall cost per student is based off of last year's numbers. So I can tell you here, and I'll use last year's ADM. So I won't use a head count of 4,000. All I'm doing is
Do that while you multitask?
I'm gonna multitask.
All right. So with the 5 mills, we're talking about 5 mills, and then we're looking at that for our deficit spend, right? Cover that.
Yes.
Over the year. Is that taken into consideration, progressive and all these other things that can happen? Or are we looking at 5 mills and then in 4 years we're gonna have to come back again if something does pop on that?
Right now, it seems progressive will continue to pay what it's paying. I mean, a similar situation would be, we passed a levy in 2008. The state elected to eliminate the tangible personal property tax, of which this district at one point received 12% of its operating revenue from. At that point, it might have been 7.2 million. We get zero from that taxing stream. So think of Phillips Medical was a big tangible personal property taxpayer because the state said that we were at a competitive disadvantage on our manufacturing sector by taxing them on things like inventory held, machinery used, furniture in offices. Our manufacturing sector is gone anyways. There's not much left. We'll see it for a while. To answer your question, using last year's statistics, I used this year's because last year we had that big transfer out, which is an anomaly. So if I take 78,919,175 divided by 3881, 20,334. 20,334, which is different than what you'll see on the CUP report because what they include and exclude a variety of functions and subcategories within the accounting structure. All debt is taken out because another district has debt. So they try to take like functions, typically in areas like support services, instruction, administration, and apply that uniformly among all the districts in Ohio. Sometimes our number gets somewhat skewed because of CVAC, because of Excel Tech. This is the general operating budget.
So this question, I think, so for the 5 mills, what is that for a household of $100,000?
So 5 mills. So not including what they're currently paying, and because they eliminated the homestead and rollback subsidy, however, they're introducing now new legislation that says if you're making less than $70,000 and you own the home and you're greater than the age of 70, you'll get a credit. $175. 5 mils, $100,000 fair market value. Wasn't expecting this to be some questions tonight,
You handled it very well.
Any other questions?
I just want to be clear, should the levy pass in November 2024, how many years will that rest on budget so you're not in a deficit?
Right now, operating deficit 4 years is what I've been able to simulate, assuming everything else holds true. Obviously, we've got the cash reserves. I also assume that our insurance rates will be 7%, which is the maximum that we've negotiated the contracts with. Hard caps. Our health insurance program is about $14 million. So for every 1%, that's $140,000. And true healthcare inflation is around 9%. So what I mean by that is we negotiated our contracts a hard cap at 7%. So that's the risk to us. Anything greater than that is 100% paid by the employee, unless they want to change the plan design. So we've insulated ourselves from dramatic risk. So we've been fortunate the last couple of years to see 2% growth, 2%. So what I mean by this, it could be extended longer if things like that are positive. But there's too many variables. That's kind of how COVID helped us extend the levy term. Our health insurance and it has helped us. We've been very strategic by using what are called buyouts or exit incentives to take our folks at the top of the scale, incentivizing them to leave, and then making determinations whether we replace them or replace them at a lower value. We can take what's called attrition savings, and it's just between that high-end salary and introductory salary, putting that in the savings account. But I know it's important. Yeah, sorry.
So $175 for the year.
For $100,000.
For $100,000. And for getting an education that's worth $20,000 a year.
Currently, yes. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Again, this is what's being reported today. We'll follow up again in May. And if I may answer Mr. Atkin's question, the fiscal stewardship committee is no longer. In August, you guys agreed to establish the our operations as not a committee, but as a forum for the administration to present not only the information, but to take questions about the information. So this evening was the opportunity to kind of ask questions about what's in the forecast. It may be late, but we're trying to introduce this now so that we can get better. When should we be presenting the forecast? Should we be presenting that, getting about it in May? Should this conversation occur in March? So it's not, this is what we're seeing, this is an update. And here's the detail. Because I know Mr. Atkins got a very strong financial mind, and that's, the detail is where it's at. And there's a lot of moving pieces and parts, so that's the time in which we can bring, we've got those on our website, we advertise those meetings. So we can talk further later, but just in response. That is the intent of the new Focus Board Mayfield, is they take these operational pillars, are where they're going to be administrative led, and then the board will be there as observers and take that information in. If there's questions that they have that's a policy related issue or something that changes the strategic direction of the district, and then they'll deliver that in a special board meeting.
We'd just like to add to that, the 4 pillars, big 4, will be visited twice.
Right now, twice during the school year. So twice beginning from September to December, and then January to May. These are April. Probably. They're 8 meetings. David, I'll take a question.
There's a comment. Dr. Grosek told me there were no questions in this session, so I didn't come prepared for questions.
Oh, at the R operations to clarify, the pillar talks, their talks.
That was
So I should be
before the
coming to-
board, that was a session before the board.
So that was my lost opportunity to ask questions. Okay, I'll get
Only
it right. I'll get it right next time.
Only this time. Any other questions from the board? Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, I have a question. If you could just clarify, that $20,000, is that per pupil expenditure for each student?
question?
Is that a per pupil value? And the answer is
Ends up being about 50 cents a day when you break it all up.
Thank you.
So that's pretty good for a $20,000 education. Thank you.
All right, that moves us to the approval of the 5-year forecast.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Hess, you second. Sorry, thank you.
Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Next, we'll move to donations. Motion to approve. So
Second.
Mr. Tressi, thank you.
roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Item E is financial transactions. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Grosek. Ms. Grosek, excuse me.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Move to start. Perfect. In other treasurer's business, we have the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 26, 2023. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Next, we have the PSI Affiliates Incorporated change form for St. Francis fiscal year 2023-2024. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Next, we have a memorandum of understanding. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
And another memorandum of understanding. Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Next, we have the construction manager at risk. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Fenaro.
Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
And last but not least, my least favorite, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Green seconded. Sorry, Mr. Hess.
Yes. Roll call?
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.